2. Social reform movement. Social reform movements. Social conditions in the 19th century. Indian society in the 19th century was characterized by social obscurantism and religious superstitions. Hinduism, as Max Weber observed, had become a compound of magic, animism and superstition. The caste system was the steel frame of Hinduism. It divided the Hindu community into a multitude of almost hermetically sealed groups hierarchically graded and based on birth. The humiliation of untouchability militates against human dignity. The plight of women was horrible. The birth of a girl was unwelcome, her marriage a burden and her widowhood inauspicious. Infanticide, child marriage, polygamy, the burning of widows etc. were interpreted as religiously valid. The priests exercised an overwhelming and unhealthy influence on the minds of the people. Idolatry and polytheism helped to reinforce their position. Various peripatetic groups were stereotyped into the colonial construct called thugs, who were believed to have been members of a fraternity traditionally involved in robbery and ritual killings in the name of religion. What were the circumstances which led to reforms? Renaissance and the impact of British rule. The 19th century saw the emergence of modern views and ideas among the enlightened sections of society. With the growth of colonial dominance, a new intelligentsia developed which recognized the need to launch movements to reform social institutions and religious outlook. 3. Socio-cultural reforms formed the major plank of all the intellectual endeavors of the 19th century. The beginning of English education played an important role in bringing the knowledge of some of the advanced ideas of the Western world. The new scientific outlook, the doctrine of rationalism and humanism particularly impressed the English educated class. The new concept of secularization was born. Urbanization and modernization promoted a new outlook and erosion of orthodox way of living. Indian intellectuals closely scrutinized the country's past and found that many beliefs and practices were no longer of any use and needed to be discarded. Most of the great thinkers of this age wanted to recreate the glorious and splendid Indian culture and civilization by reforming its social and religious structure. Neither a revival of the past nor a total break with tradition was contemplated. It is therefore, rightly said, the socio-cultural regeneration of the India of the 19th century was occasioned by the colonial presence, but not created by it. Social condition. The social condition as discussed earlier prevalent at that time made the reform inevitable. Opposition to Western culture. The coming up of colonial rule saw the intrusion of Western culture in Indian society. This gave a call to re-energize the traditional institutions and to realize the potential of traditional culture. Awareness among enlightened Indians. There was an awareness that the internal weakness within India's social structure has led it to a point where a vast country like it has been colonized by a handful of Europeans. This realization led to the imminent demand for social reform. Nationalism. The second half of the 19th century saw a rising tide of nationalism and demand for democracy. This also led to the movements to reform and democratize the social institutions and religious outlook. The resolve to strengthen them was further strengthened by growth of nationalist sentiments, emergence of new economic forces, spread of education and impact of Western ideas. 4. Humanism. It is a philosophical stance that emphasizes the individual and social potential and agency of human beings. It considers human beings as the starting point for serious moral and philosophical inquiry. Black small square. Starting in the 20th century, humanist movements have typically been non-religious and aligned with secularism. Most frequently, humanism refers to a non-theistic view centered on human agency, and a reliance on science and reason rather than revelation from a supernatural source to understand the world. Rationalism. It is the epistemological view that regards reason as the chief source and test of knowledge, or any view appealing to reason as a source of knowledge or justification. Black small square. It is defined as a methodology or a theory, in which the criterion of the truth is not sensory but intellectual and deductive. Individualism. It is the belief that individual people in society should have the right to make their own decisions, etc., rather than being controlled by the government. Who formed the social base of these reforms and what ideology drove them? Reform had two bases, one is social and other is ideological. Newly emerging middle class and the traditionally and Western educated intellectuals formed the social base for these movements to propagate. Their social roots lay in government services or the profession of law, education, journalism. They were inspired by the transformation in the West which were brought by Renaissance, Reformation, Enlightenment and democratic reforms. Ideology. The ideologies which inspired these movements were based on rationalism, humanism and religious humanism. Raja Ram Mohan Roy upheld the principle of causality, the principle that everything has a cause, while according to Akshay Kumar Dutt, rationalism is our only preceptor. A. K. Dutta held that all natural and social phenomena could be analyzed and understood by a totally mechanical process. For e.g., he cited medical opinion against child marriage. Swami Vivekananda held that the same method of investigation which applies to other sciences should form the basis on which the religion is to justify itself. This perspective helped Indians to evaluate truth in any religion by the criteria of logic, reason and science. Universalistic approach. Though the reformers tried reforming the religion they belonged to, their perspective was universalistic. E.g., Raja Rammohan Roy considered different religions as national embodiments of universal theism. He defended the basic principles of all religions such as monotheism of Vedas, Unitarianism of Christianity. Also Syed Ahmed Khan said that all prophets have the same Diyan, faith, and every nation has different prophets. Keshab Chandra Sen said that, our position is not that truth is to be found in all religions, but that all established religions of the world are true. 5. Note: Unitarianism is a form of Christianity that denies the doctrine of the Trinity. Why was the reform religious? The emphasis of the reforms on religion was high, but religion was not the sole concern of these movements. At that time, religion was a dominant ideology. Also, most of the social ills like untouchability, gender discrimination, sati, etc. derived legitimacy from the religion only. Types of reform movements. 2 types of reform movements. 1. Reformist movements, Brahmo Samaj, Prarthana Samaj, Aligarh movement. 2. Revivalist movements, Arya Samaj, Deoband movement. Both revivalist and reformist appealed, to varying degree, to bring back the lost purity of the religion. Social reform. The social reforms were majorly based on the ideas of social equality and equal worth of all individuals. Reforms in the early years, they had a narrow social base, as it was limited to educated upper and middle class Indians. It was led by organizations such as Social Conference, Servants of Indian Society, and the Christian missionaries and enlightened individuals like Jyotiba Phule, K.T. Karve, Gopalhari Deshmukh, K.T. Talang, Narayan Guru, D.V. Karve, E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar. Reforms in later years, they were successful in penetrating even the lower strata of society. By the beginning of the 19th century, the leadership of social reform was provided by the leaders of the national movement. Reformers used novels, dramas, poetry, and press to spread their ideas. Broadly, these social reform movements had 2 agenda. 1. Betterment of the condition of women. 2. Removal of disabilities arising out of untouchability. Methods adopted to spread reform. Reform of individual. Intellectuals believed that to bring reform in society, the change had to come from within the individual themselves. 6. Reform by legislation. Some reformers believed that getting legislative sanction to evil practices could only be curbed by that. Like widow remarriage, abolition of sati practice, raising the age of marriage. Reform by adopting symbols of change. It was adopted by individuals through activities like challenging existing draconian rules of caste, untouchability by eating food with lower castes and defying other caste rules. Reform by intellectual work. Education. It includes the spread of education to counter illiteracy and ignorance. Intellectual stressed education to all sections of society and emphasis on the knowledge of science and technology. Vernacular languages. Intellectual emphasis on spread of ideas of change propagated in vernacular languages to get more penetration into the society and understandable to the common man. Emphasis on rationality. Developing the rationalist critique of socio-religious reality by replacing faith with rationality. Evaluation of socio-religious practices from the point of social utility. Role of scripture. As priestly classes were blamed for distorting scripture knowledge, intellectuals sought scriptural sanction. Reform through social work. Reformers realized that purely intellectual work would not be sufficient, it should be aligned with social work. Contribution of Vidyasagar is a remarkable example. Factors led to reforms. Condition of women. The society heavily leaned towards patriarchy. Women were given lower social status and considered subordinate to men. This was prevalent in both Hindus and Muslims. Women. Practices such as purdah, early marriage, ban on widow remarriage, and sati had always suppressed the desire to give expression to their talents and energies. Among Hindus, women were denied the right to inherit property and terminate an undesirable marriage. Among Muslims, they could inherit only half of the property as men could. In matters of divorce, they didn't have equal say as men. Polygamy was prevalent in both Hindus and Muslims. The glorification as wives and mothers was the only way through which society used to recognize their contributions. Steps taken to address such issues. Basically, individualism and equality were the main focus of the reforms concerning women. As the result of consistent effort of the reformers, a number of administrative measures were brought in for the emancipation of the women. These were widow remarriage. Brahmo Samaj kept the agenda of widow remarriage high on its agenda. Black Small Square Hindu Widows Act. Remarriage Act of 1856 was passed legalizing widow remarriage and declaring issues from such marriages legitimate. It was mainly due to the effort of Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar that the act came into being. 7. Black Small Square Vishnu Shastri Pandit founded the Widow Remarriage Association in the 1850s. Black Small Square in 1852, Karsandars Mulji started Satyaprakash in Gujarat advocating widow remarriage. Black Small Square in Western India. The work for widow remarriage was led by D.K. Karve and in Madras by Veerasalingam Panchulu. Black Small Square. D.K. Karve also opened a widow's home in Pune to provide vocational training to high caste widows and give them an interest in life. Karve also set up Indian Women's University at Bombay in 1916. Black Small Square. B.M. Mabari, M. G. Ranade, K. Natarajan were also among the prominent figures advocating widow remarriage. Abolition of sati. As a result of consistent efforts by reformers like Raja Rammohan Roy, the government brought regulation of 1829 abolishing the evil practice of sati. Ban on female infanticide. The practice was highly prevalent in upper-class Bengalis and Rajputs. The Bengal Regulation Act of 1795 and 1804 declared infanticide illegal. In 1870, an act passed to make it compulsory for parents to register the birth of all babies and also made provision to verify the female children for some years after the birth. Curbing child marriage. Black Small Square Age of Consent Act, 1891, it forbade the marriage of girls below 12 years of age. Black Small Square Sada Act, 1930, extended the marriage age to 18 for boys and 14 for girls. Women's education. In 1849, Jed Bethune founded the Bethune School in Calcutta for girls' education. Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar was associated with around 35 girls' schools and is considered a pioneer in children's education. During this time the Woods Dispatch, 1854 stressed the need for female education. The Swadesi and anti-partition movement and home rule movement proved to be a major liberating experience for women who till now were mainly home-centered. Since non-cooperation, women participated neck to neck with men, faced lathies, picked shops and went to jails. Sarojini Naidu became the first Indian woman to be the president of Indian National Congress. Achievements of reform movements. Remarkable legislations. The Regulation of 1829, abolishing sati practice and punishing if done. Bengal Regulation of 1795 and 1804, declaration of infanticide illegal. Government Act of 1870 making registration of child and verification of female child mandatory some years after birth. Hindu Widows Remarriage Act of 1856. Civil Marriage Act 1872. Prohibition of marriage if a girl is below 14 years of age and boy below 18. Age of Consent Act 1891, forbade the marriage of girls below the age of 12. Shada Act 1929, penal action on violation of Civil Marriage Act. The reform movement put emphasis on female education. 8. It also played an important role in establishing a link between belief and society. Caste-based exploitation and the evil of untouchability. In Hinduism, the caste of a person determines the status and relative purity of a person. The worst hit by the caste-based discrimination were the untouchables. They were subject to disabilities which were humiliating and inhuman. Factors which led to dilution of caste consciousness. British rule. It led to creation of certain conditions which undermined caste consciousness to an extent. It brought the concept of equality before the law. Administrative services were made open to all castes and the education system was on secular lines. Modern commerce and industry and modern means of communication provided equal opportunity even to the people of lower caste to improve their well-being and rise to higher strata of society. Free buying and selling of land led to the upset caste equation. Role of social reform movements. Organizations such as Brahmo Samaj, Prarthana Samaj, Ramakrishna Mission, Social Conference, Arya Samaj worked relentlessly to improve the social condition of untouchables. National movement. By bringing from the people of all sections of society together, national movements tended to infuse unity. The ideology which inspired the leaders and the whole freedom struggle was based on liberty and equality. After 1937, Congress ministries in several provinces worked for the emancipation of untouchables. E.g., introducing free education for them. Gandhi argued that Shastra do not sanction untouchability and even if they did, they should be ignored. In 1932, He founded the All India Harijan Sangh. Spread of education and increasing awareness among lower castes themselves led them to assert their rights regarding equality. In Maharashtra, Jyotiba Phule led a movement against Brahminical domination. He opened several girls' schools. B.R. Ambedkar organized the All India Scheduled Caste Federation. All India Depressed Classes Association was formed by several reformist leaders. During the 1920s, the self-respect movement was organized, led by E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar. Srinarayan Guru led a lifelong struggle in Kerala against the upper caste domination. He coined a one religion, one caste and one God for mankind. His disciple Sahadran Ayyappan changed it to no religion, no caste and no God for mankind. Polytheism and idol worship. Intellectuals denounced idol worshipping. They upheld the knowledge of Upanishads and Vedas as way superior and emphasized the worship of one God, who was omnipresent, omnipotent and omniscient. Misleading rituals and ceremonies, discouraging all superstitious rituals as well as intermediation of priestly classes as a deterrent to the development of an individual and society. 9. Thuggee. Campaign against thuggee was initiated in the 1830s by Lord Bentinck. Thuggee Act, XXX, 1836 was passed and Thuggee Department was created for prosecuting gangs seen as perpetrating a crime in the name of religion, but its elimination proved to be a difficult task. In 1839, Sir William Sleeman as head of department claimed that Thuggee had been exterminated, but in reality, he began to realize difficulty in doing this and it was just a face-saving measure. Ramahan Roy, 1772–1833. Ramahan Roy was born in a Bengali Brahmin family at Radhangarh in 1774. In 1803, Roy accepted service under the East India Company. In 1814, Ramahan retired from service and settled in Calcutta and embarked on a glorious career of public service and reform. His reform activities were accelerated after he settled down in Calcutta in 1814. He believed in monotheism. He wrote, "Gift to monotheists" and translated into Bengali the Vedas and 5 Upanishads to prove that ancient texts support monotheism. Ramahan Roy believed that Vedanta is based on reason, and if the reason demanded, even the departure from the scripture is justified. In 1815, Ramahan Roy founded the Atmiya Sabha at Calcutta to propagate the monotheistic doctrines of Hinduism and fight social evils. Calcutta Unitarian Committee was established by Raja Ram Mohan Roy.